Hey, and welcome back to Game Talk. I'm your host, Sam and Mion. Today I'm joined by Connor
Hey guys.
and Mike.
Hello.
And I think today's topic has been a long time coming. The implosion of the AAA gaming space, the layoffs, all of it. And I think now is a good time to discuss it, and we have been discussing it, peppered in throughout episodes this year and last year. But today we're hot off the heels of the news that Sony has laid off roughly a tenth of their workforce for PlayStation. And this has affected studios like Insomniac, Naughty Dog, Guerrilla Games. Studios that I would think would be pretty much untouchable due to the pedigree of those studios and to the sales too. Like, these are PlayStation's best. But they were seemingly hit hardest with these layoffs. And not only that, several projects were canceled as well, not only in just the laid off studios. So this, I think, leads into the larger discussion of we've talked about the AAA gaming space not being sustainable. When's the crash going to happen? What's it going to look like? I think we're in the midst of it now. And when all is said and done, I think the gaming industry as a whole will look very different from how it does now. So I just wanted to throw that out there. What do you guys make of the PlayStation layoffs, and I guess in a larger context of where the AAA space is headed?
I think they're really disappointing, but not terribly surprising if you saw the Insomniac leaks and saw like how much money these games would have to make to turn a profit to how expensive they are. I find it deeply disappointing. I think it's a mistake. I think because they were still profitable. These are not layoffs to save the company. These are layoffs to increase profits.
Yeah, they weren't profitable enough, which it churns my stomach, right? Like, they're doing well by all intents and purposes. They're just not making enough money.
No,
shareholders are upset, and the people who are the lifeblood of the company are the ones who pay the price.
You get to be Insomniac. You get to release Spider-Man 2, the fastest selling PlayStation exclusive ever. And you get hit with layoffs a couple months later, or a few months later.
Yeah, it is. It's baffling. I think another part of the story is a lot of the companies targeted by layoffs, or if not all of them, were working on live service games, right? So Naughty Dog had Last of Us Factions that was canceled, right? Like, so that's presumably tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars down the drain. And Insomniac, based off the leaks we discussed a few weeks back, had multiplayer projects gestating. I don't know how far along they were, but they were also sort of going down that route. Guerrilla is also working on a multiplayer Horizon game.
See,
Fire Sprite was working on a live service Twisted Metal game that has now been canceled. It's just like, I don't know, man. Like, we're just three normal dudes who talk about video games, not in a business sense at all. We're not like involved in the business at all. And I could have told you 5 years ago that taking all of your single player studios and having them do live service games was a bad idea that wouldn't bear fruit. Like, I just don't.
I think to really understand this, and it's obvious, you're right, it's obvious, but to really understand this, we have to look at the companies that aren't having this problem. And that's Nintendo, that's FromSoft, that's... Who made Helldivers 2? Arrowhead. That's Arrowhead. It's these companies that retain talent and make... They get to make... I mean, From Software specifically, they've been making the same kind of game since Demon's Souls. They've had a similar team makeup, and they've been able to hone their craft and perfect it. Same with Zelda. A lot of names on the new Zelda games have been on Zelda games for 20 years now, or longer. And
and it's so telling. And I love that you bring up From Software, because there was a very recent interview with Miyazaki where, like, reporters asked him, like, how is From Software so successful? How are you doing so well? And he's just like, yeah, we have good developers and we treat them well. That's essentially all he said.
He said retention. He said we retain our developers. And that it really is that simple. Like, Nintendo has one of the highest employer retention rates in the country of Japan. Like, let alone in game development. Like, a lot of games are seen as contracts a lot of the time, and these companies will like have a team on, and you don't know if you get to the next project. When the project is over, you might be let go, and that's obviously stupid because like how do we get great game developers if they have to spend a significant portion of their career job hunting? And
it's crazy to me because it seems like such an obvious thing to me, a layman, where it's just like you are very clearly sacrificing the long-term prospects of your company for short-term profits. And that's just insanity.
I do want to push back, though. I don't want us to... Well, not push back against that. You're just right, to be clear. But I feel weird criticizing Sony for canceling all these games because we will, in the same breath, ask how Skull and Bones ever came out and, like, Suicide Squad, how Kill the Justice League.
No, I agree with you that ultimately, I think canceling these games was the right move. It's just that why did these games get greenlit in the first place?
And it's because the people making decisions are not game developers. It's suits that have never played a video game that are looking at a graph and, you know, seeing high numbers on things that they don't understand and making decisions based on that.
Speaking of suits, right? So the new CEO, or shall we say interim CEO of PlayStation, is Hiroki Totoki, and he's strictly a finance guy. He's a money guy.
Yeah, and I think putting finance guys at the head of a company is a bad idea for people.
A creative
involved.
Company.
So,
yeah. Like Sony, yes, they're an entertainment company. Yes, they're in it to make money, but like their way of making money is their creativity, which is their devs.
So what's happening in games right now is something that happens in a lot of creative industries. It's a story my cousin Jake likes to tell a lot, which is Cartoon Network. I don't know if you guys remember this. I was still watching Cartoon Network when this happened, but they had some great shows on that were doing really well. Flapjack, Chowder, I think Billy and Mandy were still on. A lot of great shows that I still like a lot, and I just kind of assumed that they must not have been doing that well at the time. But what actually happened was a new executive was put in charge, and he thought cartoons were stupid. So he canceled all cartoons on Cartoon Network and turned it into a live action. And that's when you got like Destroy, Build, Destroy and Dude, What Would Happen, and a bunch of shows that are not remembered fondly by pretty much anyone.
They didn't hit. They just fell apart because...
And I think the same thing is happening at HBO right now.
Yes.
With Zaslav in charge.
Is an idiot.
He doesn't really see the value in any of these cartoons, and they're getting shot.
And that's what's happening in games. It's very similar, but it's what's the value in these short-term, like single-player experiences where we get one shot of money when we could be getting money for a long time from a live service game.
Yeah, it's the gamble they made. Mm-hmm. They thought they could pivot to live service, have that be successful, and maybe double, triple, quadruple the current money, the current profits they had. That is such a risky gamble, right? And
it's not what anyone
any of
wanted.
us could have told you. Yeah. It's not really paying off.
I'd much rather see at the head of one of these companies a marketing guy than someone who just likes to look at numbers and say, that's good.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Jim Ryan was the marketing guy. And now that we have Hiroki Totoki, I kind of miss Jim Ryan, right? Like Jim Ryan, for his weird opinions, his sort of, I guess, aversion to actually playing video games and seeing them as products, he knew what he was doing to an extent, right? Like these decisions that are being made now are detrimental to the long-term health of PlayStation. I firmly believe that.
I agree. And I think, God, I hope, a lot of these devs were these mostly Western devs? I actually don't know the makeup of PlayStation's layoffs very well.
Yeah. So they were like entirely Western devs.
Okay.
So Naughty Dog, Insomniac, Firesprite, London studio actually closed. Like their only VR dedicated studio is gone. Which to me, this indicates that Sony has thrown in the towel for VR.
Yeah, and for a lot of these layoffs, they're purely because someone at the top doesn't want to take a pay cut to make ends meet. So they just cut hundreds of jobs.
And I just got a shout out.
be
Satoru
inconvenient.
Iwata famously took a huge pay cut after the Wii U underperformed so that they wouldn't have to lay anyone off at Nintendo.
Yeah. Because a lot of these people at the top don't realize that experience is what makes games good. And having a studio that's just all new faces every game release, you're just going to get a garbage game every release.
I think you're...
See, if you're at the top and you're making these decisions, you should also have to face the consequences of those decisions.
Exactly. I think you're giving them too much credit, Mike. I don't think it's ignorance. I think it's cruelty. And greed. Yeah. I just don't think they wanted to do it. They did not care about these people.
Yeah, they wanted that $1 million paycheck, but they couldn't care enough to make sure these people can still go home and feed their families.
And I'll tell you,
London Studio has been around for over 2 decades.
And the quality of games suffers when you lay off people.
The message that they have sent today is to the young person who wants to get into games, don't. It's a bad idea.
Yeah.
It is a bad idea to get into AAA game development. Indie is tough for its own batch of reasons. If you want to go out on your own or even get hired at one of these indie studios, maybe that's different. But AAA game development is an unwise career decision any way you slice it now.
It's just not smart.
And to the people that are currently working in AAA, if you're not thinking of a union right now, I don't know what you're thinking.
Even this specific layoff. We'll talk about the Microsoft ones, the Embracer ones, but this one more than anything should be a red flag that no one's safe.
Yeah, it wasn't underperforming studios that got hit with these layoffs. It was everyone.
PlayStation's best studios got hit with the layoffs.
No, because they don't value anyone. And
they just see those numbers at the end of the day and think, oh, this game did bad because gamers obviously don't want single player experiences. They want money sinks. They want to dump money into a game that keeps releasing over and over and over again.
It's something that makes me furious, and I hear it all the time as advice to an employee is to make yourself invaluable to your company. I'm here to say it does not matter. This is an idea that has stayed prevalent in programming circles for a long time because you could sort of hold your employer hostage to an extent for a long time because you could write code that only you could read, but that is less and less true every year, and the consequences for that are definitely weighing on the industry, even outside of games. But this just says it right here. They don't care. You could be the most valuable employee they have. You are a line item. They don't care.
Yeah, and the wild thing about this, and something that's important to know, is that the firing of Bungie's longtime composer Michael Salvatore was enough evidence that being valuable doesn't matter. Because Michael Salvatore had been with Bungie since the beginning. He co-did all the Halo music.
No, and the Halo theme song is in the pantheon of most famous songs. Maybe just songs in general, but certainly songs in gaming. The viral meme of the dude singing the Halo theme in the bathroom,
it's iconic. And of course, you'd think that he's invaluable. He's done music for every single one of their games that has brought them to.
And I would say games are especially bad because when you work for a company like Walmart or like a company that has many employees. I don't want to highball it, but I want to say Walmart probably employs over 100,000 people. I don't know. You feel obfuscated from how much your employer is making off of your back. But when you work in games and there are, probably at most thousands of you, and you see this guy at the top who genuinely doesn't do anything and faces no repercussions for his actions, raking in hundreds, if not thousands of times as much money as you make. What's happening here? I don't understand how anybody can abide by that, especially when their actions are so disastrous and foolish.
Yeah, those disastrous actions are what's being paid for right now. The people at the top said make live service games. Now the people at the top are saying, wait, we don't want live service games. And the people who devoted years of their life to fulfill their wishes are now facing the punishment. It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you guys, right? Like, I really do believe now we're facing the reckoning now. AAA is getting hammered. All last year we were seeing layoffs. This year that number has only skyrocketed. Surely there's going to be more to come.
Yeah.
What's going to happen at the end of this, right? Like, I feel like to an extent, a lot of these AAA layoffs, right? Like, it means something to be a Naughty Dog developer. Like, it means something to be a Blizzard developer. All of these people, I could see smaller AA indie studios cropping up everywhere, headed by these people, getting, crowdfunded maybe based off their pedigree, and maybe we'd see smaller games from these individuals.
I could see that. I could see current AA, like would we call Remedy AA? I think they're weird because they're kind of indie almost, but not really. They're not relying on a publisher typically.
Yeah, they're in that same space as Larian, kind of.
But yeah, Larian's a good example too. Like studios like Larian, studios like Remedy, these are where you'd want to work. These are where, Remedy's, even Alan Wake 2, I don't think sold that many copies, but it didn't have to. And it also, notably, one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. Like, you do not need these colossal budgets to make a masterpiece.
And the thing about Alan Wake 2 is that it was, and still is, a very super niche title that not everyone's going to like.
But they knew, because they have a history of doing it, of like having realistic expectations and meeting them, and they will. They have enough money to make their next game, and they're going to be fine. And that's how you run a company. Like Larian is in a unique position where I imagine they have a lot more money than they thought they were going to have. But
yeah, and I really think there are two problems we're facing right now. One is the, I guess, misguided pivot of the executive to live service, resulting in failed projects and layoffs. And two are the ballooning budgets of single-player games that also contribute to layoffs because these games, while successful, don't make enough money to justify their existence.
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Budget-wise, this isn't fair because I haven't seen enough of The Last of Us Part 2. But I do not see meaningful difference between Alan Wake and it. Like, or where the budget goes into it, I guess. I don't see it. So I just, these ballooning budgets, I don't want to say it because arguably what I'm saying is employ fewer people, but like employ fewer people is also the right answer because if you employ fewer people, you're not laying people off. You're not overhiring irresponsibly.
Yeah, and one would hope that, like, now what's done is done. Like, maybe we can get back on the path of natural growth instead of forcibly accelerating things, having your headcount spiral out of control and having to cut people in order to make ends meet.
I think
I just know that's not going to happen because sooner or later, someone's going to get greedy again, and then we'll do this whole song and dance again.
Yeah, because there's nothing stopping them. There were no repercussions for the people who made these decisions at all. So I would say I think we're going to see it. It's going to take a long time to see it. I mean, we are already seeing it. We are already seeing the biggest games in the world right now are, and some of the best selling often, are made by inexperienced people. And you see that sometimes. Like, you can see that games are not releasing in the Power World, but I would even say, like, even bigger games, like Call of Duty is largely made by inexperienced people. They hire young developers, they don't pay them well. And, those games are kind of a mess. And I'm not blaming those developers for that because it's a timeline problem. It's a refusal to retain people problem. It's a million different things. It's a scope problem. But yes, the game made by people who've been making games for 20 years is going to be made better than the game made by a group of kids in their early 20s making, who just got their job at Activision or whatever. Like, There's no way around that. It's just how it's going to be. And in a world that makes any sense at all, you have leadership that's been in the industry for 20 years, and you have a couple of junior developers working with them so that they can learn.
And even them, this is still based off of greed, because you can pay those junior developers that are making your biggest products much less than you could pay for someone who's been there for 20 years.
That's why they do it. Yeah, that's why they don't want to hold on.
So much money.
You become too valuable as you get experience, and they don't want you anymore.
Which is just, it's crazy. Because to me, this is them saying that, like, we're going to bet that your experience that led us to this success in this first place is less likely to contribute to our future success. Like, what? It doesn't make any sense at all. It's like they're the ones who brought you here.
Yeah, it's ego.
Yeah, and that's why a company like Valve is doing so well.
Yeah.
Because Valve's like a retirement home for the games industry. You go to Valve and you just don't leave.
I think Valve has a statement, I think, on their website or somewhere. Because I looked at working at Valve at one point just out of curiosity. And they have a statement that they believe that there are only, it's either a few thousand or around 10,000 people alive that are skilled enough to meet Valve's standards.
Yeah,
and like that is
hire good people.
That is how they treat it, and they pay you very well, from what I understand.
Yeah, like most people that go to Valve, they don't leave Valve, and I mean their management structure makes it very easy to work there, because you don't like working on a project, unhook your desk and move it to another room.
Right,
you're now on a different project.
That's another thing that both Nintendo and I would say FromSoft get right, is that they do give people opportunities to lead a project and prove themselves. Like a famous example is one of my favorite Legend of Zelda games, Link's Awakening, was originally like, it was a group of guys working on a project after hours, and they liked it and they let them make it. Like, and that's how games are. It's art. Like, it is a creative work. You can't
shove somebody into the Call of Duty mines and expect them to produce good content, because it's art. Games are art. You have to be passionate about art for it to be like.
And I want to specify that we are not dunking on these developers. Like, that is not the point.
It's not their fault.
That is not it.
It's like, not the devs' fault. It's the CEOs that are pushing them into like, hey, you got to release another sequel.
The system that has been created by the AAA space, that is at fault.
Yes.
Like, this whole system needs to be put on trial, basically. Like, we're seeing the consequences of the actions taken by the people spearheading the AAA gaming space. And now, like, it wouldn't surprise me if the next decade or so we see a lot of slower growth, more organic growth. And that's what I sort of hope for, because I truly do miss the Sony of the late PS3, early PS4 era.
Oh, yeah.
Where they were just trying things, experimenting, had way more smaller games that they were putting out more frequently. And even like their AAA games, they were putting out at a very quick cadence, like Uncharted 2, 3. Like, these games came out frequently. They were 8 to 10 hours. They were cutting edge in visuals, audio, what have you, and then you were done with them, and then you moved on.
What I don't understand about modern AAA gaming is that on the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, and the PlayStation 3, there was a very clear development pattern that was followed, which was a first game comes out, your Spyro, your Crash Bandicoot, your Jak and Daxter, or your Uncharted Drake's Fortune. And they were clearly rougher than their sequels, but you were able to, without a ton of advancement in technology or anything, you were able to use all the tools and everything from those games and make masterpieces sequels. Like Spyro 2 and Spyro 3 are both just amazing games in my opinion. Crash Bandicoot 2 and 3 blow the first one out of the water. I don't know if that's a hot take. Didn't play the other Jak and Daxters, but I wanted a PS2 representation in here. Sly Cooper probably would have been better. I love Sly 2 and Sly 3. And then Uncharted especially, like, Uncharted 1 is fine, but it's not one I come back to pretty much ever. But Uncharted, 2 and 3
is the peak of AAA gaming for the rest of time. I will be entirely satisfied.
Yeah. And like they just
a game doesn't need to be more AAA than Uncharted 3.
But we don't get games like that anymore. There's no iteration within a console cycle, which means they're having to make new tools by the time they make the next game. Like we are not going to get we're probably not going to get a Last of Us on PS5 at all. Like or
no, it's seeming like that part 3 will be a PlayStation 6 or very late PS5
which means
title.
We don't get a single Naughty Dog game on the PS5, right? Like,
well, no, that's not true. They're working on a new IP right now.
Oh, okay.
So I imagine that's going to come out.
But still, the Naughty Dog
like near the PS5's end,
we'd have,
which is just crazy.
We'd have an early title that is a proof of concept, and then they would iterate on it twice in a console generation. And then maybe have time to do The Last of Us still. Like, and
look at Naughty Dog's PS3 output. It's just crazy. Any way you slice it. Uncharted 1, 2, 3, and The Last of Us. Like, are you kidding me?
And if I'm being honest, like,
please bring back that era.
I've seen, obviously the quality is higher in the modern games. It is. I can't say that I fully understand why it takes so long. I really can't, because they've hired so many more people, and like, you don't have to write as efficient a code as you used to, genuinely. Like, I think if people were still writing code as efficiently as they did on the PS1, games would be insane right now. Like, I mean, that's not true for graphics code, because you have engines that are like tuned to perfection. But like,
well, in the PS1 era, you had such limited resources. You had to very intelligently think about how you wanted to use those resources.
Yeah. Right, but you can ask anyone in industry, and one of the most valuable things that you can get out of increased performance is that you do spend less time optimizing, because it is very difficult and it is very time intensive. You can build better faster with a faster console or PC, which is extremely valuable to developers.
And you looking at like a game like Helldivers, which is probably the latest smash hit, you can tell that like the dev studio just really liked working on it,
and they just have their priorities in order. There's a very recent quote from their CEO who is churning out excellent quotes, but I guess he was asked whether or not they were looking at implementing DLSS and FSR, and he essentially said, "Why would we waste our time on that when we could be programming giant mechs for you to use?" Like, yeah, and that's fair point. Very fair point. That game looks good enough. I want a giant robot.
Yeah. No, they clearly have their priorities in order. And just last week, like I was excited for the prospect of Sony getting them so they would have more access to Sony resources. But now I don't know anymore. Like, I just really do not like the direction of current Sony. And I hope that now that these layoffs have happened, what's past is past, and we can get back to Sony doing what they're good at, which is marquee AAA single-player games.
Yes.
With the caveat of them reining in the budgets just a little bit. Because that is something valid, right? Like, when Hiroki Totoki went to these studios and said that he said something to the effect of these developers, while extremely talented, are not being accountable for like their timelines and stuff. And he's right to that degree, yes. Right? Like, and I don't think it's the developers, right? It's obviously not the developers who make the timeline, but whoever is managing these teams, there needs to be a sort of wake-up call, and it needs to be said that games cannot take like 5-6 years to come out. That just can't happen anymore.
That's insane.
No.
And wherever the cuts have to happen to reduce that time, just let them happen. If games look worse, just make them look worse, right? Like if your game can only be like 5 hours long, fine, right? But like something has to give.
When we were looking at the Insomniac leaks, I said it over and over because I feel very strongly about it, but like the player is not seeing like that 1% increase in fidelity that triples your budget. We don't see it, guys. Like, it's not worth it. It's just...
Yeah, it's not worth catering to that one person who's going to be like, oh, wow.
Like,
there's a 1% increase in pixel density.
We don't need to cater to the guy with the 8K screen and a magnifying glass. Like, it's...
Yeah.
It's not...
Like, I can't see the
Digital
pixels
Foundry
anymore.
guys.
Yeah. Love them to death.
I haven't been able to see pixels in a game in a decade.
Digital Foundry produces good content if I am playing and enjoying a game, I do not watch their content because I will like the game less after watching
Right,
it.
I can't
Like,
unsee
yeah.
the things they point out.
No, it is the same way that like listening to music with really, really nice headphones is like mind poison. You will never be able to enjoy like normal headphones or speakers again. Like it's exactly the same. Where like when you know to look for this stuff, you know, oh my God, when you sat next to me and we were watching the Game Awards Ambit and you said, oh, can we find this in 4K? Oh, it made me sick.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, like
God.
I totally am. I am that guy, and I hate being that guy. But like,
No.
it's true that I can look at something and be like, "That's not 4K, gross."
I've become that guy. You talked me into buying the OLED TV that's 4K and everything. And
But here's the thing:
it's not, nobody
even
wants to be
being
that guy.
Dude. Even being that guy, I'm saying make the games look worse.
Me too.
Lower the budgets, have them come out faster. I'll deal with it. You know, like obviously, I love things to be high fidelity, high frame rate, whatever. But like, so what? You know, like I'll live with it. It's not that big of a deal.
I mean, look at Rockstar. Like on the PS2, we got Grand Theft Auto 3, San Andreas, and that other one that I don't remember the title of,
Vice
Vice
City.
City. And like, then we got
And not just that, we got several racing games, 2 Midnight Club games.
well, those are different teams.
I
aren't they?
believe.
Wasn't Bully on
Still,
PS2 as
and
well?
Bully.
Yeah, Bully. Yeah, we'll never get another Bully. But and then like they didn't put anything out original. No, I'm wrong. Red Dead 2 came out on the PS4 and Xbox One.
Right, that was their one for the gen, which just sucks that we're at that
we're
point.
at the one.
We're like
one a gen.
the biggest AAA companies put out like one game a generation.
And I can say this as a developer is that like it takes me like if I were to start a game tomorrow, it would probably take me 1 to 2 years to finish it working on my own. And that sucks because like you can count down your lifespan and how many games you get to make. And that's bad when it's 2 years. When it's 5 to 10 years, like in a 10, you know, if somebody's first game was Suicide Squad, like working at Rocksteady,
Man,
that game took 11 years to make, I think. Or at least it was 11 years between their last game and this. And like, one, it's a terrible game. Two, like, you're only going to make like 5 games in your career. And that's if you work until you're like 70. Like, what?
yeah. I mean, Suicide Squad is just the poster child for all the bad things we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
Warner-
live service
yeah.
game forced on a decorated single-player game developer, budget out of control, not performing, and now, you know,
And from
what's the last step in that sequence, right? Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see horrible things happen at Rocksteady.
And
So,
like, what I don't understand is like these guys are, you know, looking at a graph or whatever. The thing that doesn't make sense to me is they announced Suicide Squad over 5 years ago, I think, like a really long time ago. And it was not a mixed response. It was a negative response. Nobody was excited for this game. It looked bad the moment they showed it. Nobody wanted it. How does that not set off alarm bells? Like,
yeah.
you know, what are you doing, guys?
And I guess partially to Sony's credit, like they did cancel the AAA Twisted Metal live service game, which I'm going to tell you guys, unless it's the best game on the freaking planet, no one's going to touch that game.
Twisted Metal
Twisted
not
Metal
a popular
does not
franchise.
have. That's what I'm saying. Like, well, like what decade do we think we're in right now, guys? Twisted Metal was a thing during PS2.
And didn't they just release a Twisted Metal TV show?
They released a Twisted Metal TV show, which presumably did pretty well, and maybe that's the reason like they were really pushing for this game. But like I'm telling you, like
Yeah.
a piece of media doing well does not necessarily translate into game sales. We've seen that, and vice versa.
That was Anthony Mackie, right?
Yeah, Anthony Mackie.
Okay, I like him, but
No, apparently the show was like better than expected, but still, like I'm telling you, like a AAA Twisted Metal live service game is going to go the way of Suicide Squad, and I'm glad that they at least had the foresight to recognize it now,
right before
rather than
yeah.
like before they started marketing it and like getting close to completion. So, and that's the only game we know about, by the way, that they canned, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure that
there were more.
the nature of games is like there are games we've never heard of getting canned every day. Like, but that's not true. Sony doesn't have that many kitchens going at once. But very frequently, a game you've never heard of is canceled, and that's just the nature of the industry. Sometimes you have to work on something for a while before you realize it's not going to be good. That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, just personally, I'm really bummed out. Because, like, obviously I'm upset whenever layoffs like this happen. But, like, this one hit really close to home. Like, it happened in places that I just didn't think it was possible for it to happen.
Yeah, I
it
never
really
thought,
sort of opened my eyes to, like, no one is safe.
I did not see Naughty Dog layoffs happening. Like, that's their golden goose, I feel like.
Yeah.
And Insomniac, even more recently.
No, Insomniac is, like, in terms of money, if we're just talking about money, it's Insomniac. Like, they're the reason the PS5 is a success, basically, right now. Well, I would love that to be true, but it seems like the PS5 is a success mostly just based off inertia at this point.
Yeah, I feel that way too.
Because
there's really there's no games. Like,
because the third-party presence was established in the PS4 era, and people stayed there.
Yeah.
And I think the reason's as simple as that. Like, yes, first-party games matter, but they don't really matter to the extent that we think they do in terms of popularity of a console.
Well, they just didn't put that many out. Like, you can play God of War Ragnarok on your PS4. You can play,
the
only...
And it's frustrating that this generation, like every generation we've had before this, there was a cutoff point.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, yes, we realize this is going to hit a smaller audience, but this is going to drive sales of this console. And I guess they made the right choice because PS5 is selling pretty much launch aligned with PS4, but still, like, maybe I could conceive of a future where if God of War Ragnarok, if Horizon Forbidden West, if these games, which would traditionally be console exclusives, were console exclusives to the PS5, and then maybe with a PC release later down the road, like if these were PS5 only and not PS4, I could imagine PS5 sales being even higher than they are now.
I am going to say something very brave and controversial right now. In the same vein where we're saying you don't need to 10x your budget for 1% graphic fidelity, I would wager most gamers could not look at PS5 footage of God of War Ragnarok versus PS4 footage of God of War Ragnarok
Absolutely,
and be able to tell
you're correct.
any difference between those two games.
That's not a hot take at all.
Yeah, like,
the only difference really is like increased frame rate and resolution.
Yeah, and like
that's it.
I know a lot of people playing a modern console on a 720 or 1080p TV. Like they just don't care, and that's fine. Yeah. They're right to not care. Like, I am a freak for caring about these things. Like,
no, we're
I'm sick in the head.
Yeah, we're sick and twisted that we pay attention to graphic fidelity. When most people can't tell.
It is degenerate to spend what I spent on this PC and then sit here and tell you not to care about graphics.
Right, yeah. There's a bit of hypocrisy there, but, you know, we're human beings.
Yeah. No, I just like it. I'm allowed. But my bad decision didn't cost anybody their livelihood.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I can have this opinion and still be like, okay, make the games less good looking. It's fine, you know, like.
No, like.
If that means these people get to keep their jobs, if that means these games get to come out more frequently, then, like, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Like, it is a bit of a meme. Because the PlayStation 5 does have games. Like, it has good
it has a
exclusives,
library, yeah.
But at the same time, where are the games? Like, I can't shake that feeling.
No, by now you should have an Uncharted 2.
We should be getting...
Yeah.
We should be getting way more frequent releases, right? And that's a problem that needs to be solved.
Because Nintendo does it.
If solving that problem means slower growth, then, oh no, the end of the world, right? Like
Nintendo managed to do it. They, granted, like, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom had very long development cycles, but like they managed to give us like Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey in the same year, and then not that long after it, we had Bowser's Fury, like another 3D Mario come, and like we've had Mario Wonder recently. Like
Nintendo needs to be studied by other AAA game developers.
They've managed,
because they seem to be the only one who really has it figured out.
They've maintained their pace. Like the same number of Zelda games came out on the Switch as the N64. You know, they granted Majora's Mask was made in a year. We don't have to talk about that too much, but and also like the Wii U didn't get a Zelda game at all. If you know, exclusive to it, because Breath of the Wild was a simultaneous release. So Nintendo, yeah, I don't want to give them too much credit. They've made mistakes too, but
by and large, look at the history of that company and where they're at now.
yeah, no, they managed to. They make it work one way or another. Like, I can sit here and analyze their game releases and all that as much as I want, but the fact of the matter is they're fine. Like, Nintendo
It's
is
an
not going anywhere.
insanely complex equation with a bunch of variables, but if you ask me to distill it down into one sentence, I would just simply say Nintendo is not as greedy as Sony and Microsoft.
It does. I mean, you would never see the executives of those companies taking a pay cut to save their employees. And we did watch Iwata do that. Like, he was on record. He said why he did it, and he did it because he felt that he was responsible. He felt he'd made a mistake and that other people shouldn't have to pay for it. Brilliant guy, Satoru Iwata. Like, very much worth looking into his life in for a lot of reasons. Not just as the leader of Nintendo, he was also like kind of a goated programmer, from what I understand. He's the reason they were able to fit Kanto in Pokemon Gold and Silver. They were worried they weren't going to be able to fit the game on a cartridge at all, and he was able to
made it happen.
Magically make it happen. I don't really. Game Boy development is crazy.
But yeah, I intended to really talk about AAA as a whole this episode, but I think we ended up just talking about Sony, which
it's
is appropriate, right? Yeah. Because they're the most recent and one of the most egregious examples of the unsustainability of AAA and the layoffs and all of that. But we shouldn't forget, right? Like, earlier this year, Microsoft laid off around 2,000 employees after buying Activision Blizzard. Embracer Group has been laying off people and canceling projects left and right after they gobbled everyone up. So, in terms of this notion of expansion and acquisitions, I think we've reached the natural upper limit of that too, where we've seen that, like, this sort of unnatural growth where you're making like a $60 billion purchase, assuming tens of thousands of employees, that's not sustainable either. And and maybe we have the benefit of hindsight now, but like, I sort of feel like it was obvious.
Yeah. I want to point out, because I said it, I've talked about underpaid junior devs and stuff before, but I want to point out, and I can't talk about this from a 3D modeling or animating or mocap, any of that perspective, but from a software perspective, from an engineering perspective, these people do not go into games to make money. Like, these people have a skill set typically that they could be making far more money in another industry. And they choose to go into games and make less money because they love it. And it is
Absolutely.
just horrible to see them treated like that. Because especially, like, there's so much money in games. Where is it going? Why are these people not being paid as much as their peers and other, their fellow software engineers that are working on boring accounting software?
Right, like, game development, like, not to get too technical, right? But game development is a heck of a lot more difficult than what I do for my job.
No, game development in many ways got me my job. I do game development as a hobby on the side, and I was fortunate enough during my hiring process to be interviewed by someone who, like, heard that and was like he knew about game jams, and he was like, "Oh my God, yeah, we need you on this team. Like, if you can have the breadth of knowledge that it takes to make a game and, like, work on a multidisciplinary team, like, the skill set required to make games is crazy."
Yeah, because you have to work with so many different disciplines.
Yeah, you have to understand on some level so many different things. And I do wonder sometimes if that is part of the scam of having a team with thousands of people on it, is that maybe if you hire that many people, they actually don't have to have that multidisciplinary skill set, which does make them less capable of starting a studio on their own because they wouldn't have that skill set yet. I don't know. That's me pulling something out of nowhere. So, but it crossed my mind while we were talking about it.
I'm literally just seeing this as we're talking, but it was just announced that Deck 9 Games, who created Life is Strange, Before the Storm, and True Colors, is laying off 20% of the studio as well.
Oh my God.
So I don't think, I think this is just, it's just happening right now.
Yeah.
Like, this is the AAA reckoning.
That's not even AAA.
We're going to see every single company, Yeah, you're right. That's not even
That's
AAA,
double A.
but
Like
it's a pretty successful studio.
the first one was.
Yeah. Well, in many ways, they're still coasting off the success of the first game.
Yeah. They're good games, to
But
be
yeah,
fair.
no,
I've liked all of them.
like, that's just an example, right? Like, I think we're going to see these reductions of like 10 to 20% of the workforce in a lot of companies this year.
And that
And
sucks
it's
because
just,
that's
it's horrible to see.
they're a company that kept up like an old release cadence. Like they released a game every few years. Like Life is Strange, then Before the Storm, then Life is Strange 2, I think, and Life is Strange True Colors.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of those games out now. They kept up the cadence and everything. So I
don't know. There could be 1,000 reasons behind it, but
Yeah.
it's just it just further paints the picture that the gaming industry is just not in a good space right now.
no.
It's not a good place to work.
No, and it sucks because of how long these things take to make. We can see some of the ramifications now. But when these things happen, the true ramifications we will probably not see for 5 years because the games take so long to make.
Yeah, and I know, I guess just speaking about the PlayStation studios again, like Insomniac, Naughty Dog, they're extremely talented people over there. So if anyone could make it work without, I guess, their full headcount, it's them. It just sucks that this had to happen in the first place. I really hope that these studios and Sony, I guess, more so, have learned their lesson when it comes to sustainability. We don't need to overhire for these pie-in-the-sky live service games. Just let the studios do what they're good at, and you'll be happy. Like this, I think this was a classic case of unrealistic expectations leading to disappointment, leading to disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, and expectations have a lot to do with it too. The idea, we talked about this in the Xbox episode we did recently. The idea of constant growth is insane. It's not possible. It is, it's bad in the games industry, but it's bad everywhere. It is an idea that will destroy you and destroy everything. Like the idea of endless consumption. It's just sickness.
These companies exist to grow, but I agree with you in the sense that, like, growth is fine. Just have it be not as aggressive. Like,
but there really is a
you're
finite
still-
amount of
you're
growth you can
still
ever get.
being successful, right? You're still generating more money. Like, why is that not enough? I don't know. It's
Even,
it's
like,
frustrating.
even gradual growth can't be infinite. You can't do it forever.
Yeah, you can't continue to produce more and more money because eventually you're going to run out of people to sell it to.
Yeah, market saturation exists.
Yeah, and
we're
I
not
think-
there yet, but
I think we're very close to that point, right? Like,
yeah,
I think at least that's why these companies are exploring, like, Xbox putting games on PlayStation and PlayStation putting games on PC, because I
Right.
think in the console space, at least, we are reaching that saturation point where Sony has sold to everyone who's going to be interested in them on PlayStation. Same with Xbox.
The numbers between the two of them have changed, but if you tally up the total number of PlayStations and Xboxes sold, we have not really seen a meaningful change in it since the PS2. Like,
Yeah.
it's very similar in number since then, which makes sense in my opinion. I mean, population has gone up, but not spectacularly, at least not here.
Yeah, and people are, and especially in like regions like Southeast Asia and a good bit of the Asian continent, consoles aren't really a big thing over there.
No.
A lot of them prefer mobile. Mobile games are huge.
Yeah, and PC.
Because like a phone is cheap.
Sorta.
And since a lot of them are in poverty, a phone's a lot cheaper than getting a PC or a console.
Yeah.
And so they'll just get a phone and play mobile games.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess to put a pin in it, like, this has been a pretty depressing episode, but I do think it's important to talk about these things. I do think the industry is going through a rapid change right now, and I hope things are going to be better on the other side of it. I guess that's all I have to say.
So you guys been playing any games?
Oh my
All
God.
right. I've been, I'll just go because I'll just get mine over with. I've been playing Persona 3 Reload. Now, I think I'm over 60 hours in now.
You've got to be close to the end.
And my God, these games are long, man. Like, I think I am getting close to end game, but even now, like, this game is longer than I thought it'd be. Like, people always said Persona 3 was kind of on the shorter side, and I guess 60 hours is still kind of short for a Persona game, but it certainly doesn't feel that way. Oh, and by the way, like, all those people who were saying the story really picks up in the final, like, I guess, act,
True.
weren't lying. Story is going crazy right now.
I gotta jump back into it. I kind of fell off with Helldivers.
Yeah, I've basically just been alternating between Helldivers and Persona, but a lot more on the Persona side, actually. But I don't know, man. There's just something really special about Persona, and I'm already feeling it. Like, I'm already feeling that I'm going to be very sad when this game is over.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I've become extremely attached to these characters, and the character development, really, really good. It's just kind of baffling to me, though, that, like, I feel like in Persona 4 and 5, like, the big moments, quote-unquote, and character development were spread over the entire game, and in this game, it's absolutely, like, backloaded. Like, I really do feel like for the first, I don't know, 40 hours, you're just kind of hanging out and doing nothing, which is kind of wild.
That's
but, like,
kind of why I fell
it's
off,
also,
yeah.
like, fine, because I like just hanging out and doing nothing in Persona games.
Yeah.
But it is crazy that the story doesn't pick up for, like, 40 hours.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the story...
RPG moment.
Yeah. The story is picking up now, and this game, I think more so than the other two, this is a game about death. Death is the, I think, central theme to this game. And as such, like, some heavy stuff has happened that I can't remember, like, the other two that I've played having moments like this one.
Really
So,
heavier than Persona 5.
Persona 5, it's been a while since I've played Persona 5, but, like...
In the opening act of Persona 5, I'm pretty sure someone almost kills themselves because of a teacher abusing them.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I would say it's heavier than Persona 5.
Wow.
So, it's, it's a game about death and about kids learning to deal with death, and I think it's a very good game. It's an excellent game. I do think that if we compare the first 40 hours of Persona 3, 4, and 5, this one's easily in last place. But the ending is more than making up for it. It just sucks that it's so backloaded on the story front, because I know a lot of people will play this game and be like, okay, this is cool, but why isn't anything happening?
I agree.
Which
like,
is totally
Persona 5,
fair.
when I was playing it, it had the one more... It had a one more day flow to it. So almost like a game of Civ that I am not feeling in Persona 3 Reload. I'm still enjoying it, but I'm not.
No, I
It's
agree.
It's easy to turn off.
I think they figured out the secret sauce for that feeling in the subsequent games.
Yeah.
But I will say, yeah, this back half of this game is definitely delivering. So I'm enjoying it a lot. I have no idea how much longer I have left, and I still imagine it's at least 10 hours. So while yes, this is a shorter Persona game, not by much, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it for me. What about you guys?
I've got a short game to talk about that I really, 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 really like. It's called A Little to the Left. And it reminds me a lot of a game I talked about on the show a long time ago called Unpacking. It's a game... The opening sequence of the game is a couple of picture frames, and they're just not straight. And you straighten them, and a little star appears, and you move on to the next level. So it's like a little puzzle game. And it's largely like organizing objects. So one of the levels that I particularly liked was this toolbox, and you just have nails and screws and tools and stuff cluttered all over this desk, and there is a perfect way to fit them into this toolbox. And that's the game. Like, when you get it, you get a gold star, but everything has like a slot where it fits perfectly, and it's not always immediately obvious. Some of them are actually like deviously difficult, because sometimes it's not like fitting something into a compartment. Sometimes it's a a group of objects that are not immediately obviously connected, and you have to organize them in some way. And that's really nice. When you see it, it feels really good. When you don't see it, it can be very frustrating. But it's like a 3-hour long game, according to How Long to Beat. 3 hours for the main story, 8-hour completionist. Some of them, actually, this is just an example that I'll say, I guess it spoils what was, in my opinion, a very obvious puzzle. It's just a group of like 7 pencils, and you can organize them by how sharp they are. You can organize them by how long they are, or you can organize them by how much eraser they have left. And all of those things are right, and you get like a star for each of those things. And it's just a very calming, it's on Game Pass, it's just a very relaxing game to play. I really can't recommend it highly enough. It also has like a daily mode where it just gives you a puzzle to do, like 1 puzzle a day, which is like really smart because it's, it doesn't take long to launch this game. It's a very light game. I'd be shocked if it wasn't on mobile. I'm playing it on PC. It has controller support. I think it's on Xbox Game Pass as well as PC Game Pass, but I'm not sure. Very high marks from me. It was a very relaxing game. Like, my cousin stopped by one day just to like drop in for like a few minutes on his way somewhere else. And I was playing it, and he ended up sitting down and like getting sucked into it, and we played it together for like 2 hours, like having a second pair of eyes to see some of the more difficult similarities or patterns in these items. And it's also like a beautiful, like simple art style with like very simple colors and like a really charming soundtrack. It's really good. If you like organizing things, it is for you. Which is funny because if you saw my house right now, you would not think that I like a game like this.
All right, Mike, what about you?
I really haven't been gaming in the last week. I've been spending more time on my social and personal life than I have at the computer.
This guy.
What a loser.
No, I got a girlfriend, and it's kind of eating my time away from me. I've been playing a little bit of Helldivers though, but we talked about all of that last episode.
Yeah, I mean, Helldivers continues to be the game that keeps on giving.
Yeah, I also have been playing Helldivers.
We've got a good Discord group going, featuring all 3 of us and several of my friends and some of Connor's friends, and it's a lot of fun, like mixing these groups together, like just hopping on, people inevitably join you, and the game's not gotten old yet, which is great.
Truly hilarious to be in the middle of a game of Helldivers and find out that the person I'm playing it with lives a couple blocks away from me.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was playing Warframe the other day, and someone joined that had like 6 ping to me.
Oh my god.
They lived in Maryland, so it was just a miracle of a DNS.
The killer is in the house.
Direct. Like that's wild though. Like that has to be some godly DNS routing for me to be in north central West Virginia and them to be in Maryland and us to have a 6 ping.
Well, Maryland is only I only had to drive like 10 miles from my house when I lived in Morgantown to be in Maryland.
Yeah. So it's not
not very far.
But 6 ping still.
6 ping is impressive. Yeah. No, I'm not trying to discredit that. When I think of state lines, I always think of them as being very far away. And the reality is that I can drive 40 minutes from where I am now and go through Ohio, or go through West Virginia and Ohio in that time. Not like go through. I'm not on the other side of Ohio, but I cross through Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio.
Yeah, really, my last week of gaming has been playing the same games I've been talking about for the last month.
That's on brand.
Yeah. And I really haven't been doing anything interesting other than not playing League of Legends anymore.
Heroically.
Listen, I stopped playing League of Legends and I got a girlfriend.
Oh my god.
Coincidence? I think not.
He's so real for that.
I think it's because I stopped playing League of Legends and took a shower, honestly. I'm kidding on the shower bit, but you get my point.
Oh, that's great.
You too can get a girlfriend if you just stop booting up League of Legends. I promise you.
Many such cases.
Many such cases.
Now, you're still playing Dota, though, right?
No, I haven't played Dota in a little bit either, but I think Dota people get women.
Dota
That's
people
fine.
shower.
Yeah, I shower at least once a day.
All right, I think that's going to do it for us this week. A little bit of a heavier episode this week, but sometimes you do what you got to do. But thank you all for listening, and thank you for the new audience we're getting. I know we're kind of spreading out a lot more, and we're getting a lot more hits, so definitely appreciate all you new listeners. That being said, you can follow us at @podcastgametalk on Twitter. Please like, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or any other podcast services you use. Click the link in the description of the podcast to join our Discord and talk to us there. Thank you, Connor and Mike.
Yeah, see you guys next week.
See you next week. Bye.